No, I mean, this is like amazing. I mean, wow. I mean, what Andy said about design and policy, we've got Ed Hauser here with public policy, Bill with public policy, the sustainable people. We've got the libraries here, you know, we've got colleges, and we're all kind of concerned about how do we network together, I think, and how do we make our voices stronger. I think that's what Mark's question was. So does anybody have any thoughts or ideas of how we can become a stronger voice?
Well, what I thought about was we all go to all these groups and we all see each other. And part of this is about how do we expand the circle. It's not just how we interconnect better, but how do we expand the circle? Stephanie's publication is a perfect example. Green City Blue Lake, Rio Neo, the Observer Project. How do we create structures to bring more people in, to let people know about the ideas that are circulating here? So many ideas are talked about in the circle, but they don't make it out of the circle. How do we connect with the great unconsciousness?
Bill?
Yeah, I'm not sure they don't make it out of the circle. I think what it is we're not quite sure how far they make it out of the circle. And the reason I say that is that a whole lot of people in this room, including the ones that you just mentioned, have wider audiences or sets of associates or other folks they network or speak to or interact with, including everybody who's writing a blog. And the whole point about networking is that nodes interact with nodes, right? So and that's what when I said earlier that I think people have been building strong communities by building networks for a long time. Yeah, I mean, you can trace that in kind of institutional and informal social networks in communities long before they were digitally mediated. So my blog has, you know, probably, I think 400 or 500 people who read it regularly, which is not very big. But for some reason they read it, and they include a number of people who don't talk to any of you guys, right? And everybody is in that situation. The interesting thing about that, though, and I think what's happened in blogging in the city in the last 6 months in particular has been an interesting illustration of this. The way that I built up a lot of my relationships early was first George linked, right? And then some other people picked it up and linked. And then there was a lot of interlinking, right? And all those blog roles were actually, you know, cracking along and being active, right? And I mean, George played an enormously valuable role in prompting a lot of that interaction. A lot of which also occurred in meeting rooms, right? I mean, a lot of it was reinforced. So one of the things I think it's important to think about is, to answer the question you were raising, is how do you kind of raise that up? How do you spur more of it, right? I mean, the truth is anything that gets people talking a lot in a circle of people who are nodes is going to reach a lot more people who also have their own nodes. And whether or not you can trace it, it really can have an impact. The question I have about all that is, where are the places where there are no nodes?
Bill, another thing too, to get back to this question, we found out in working with that Meet the Bloggers format that all people aren't ready to join the dialogue at the same time, all people aren't receptive at the same time or ready to listen at the same time, but eventually everybody who would have an interest works around to it. Also, all the things that we're used to with TV and ratings and newspaper readership doesn't matter in the blogosphere. It's not how many people read you, it's that the right people read you. And George has more or less perfected that. And then the other thing that George discovered, and I don't think anybody else has had, I don't know how George came to do this. I think it was out of necessity or something. But George, I don't know any other place that's had an aggregator like George that brings everybody in and allows them to do things. And then had the sense or the intuition to go ahead, and see that people were polarized because of the fact they were blogging and arguing and snarky and all this type of thing. But then he brought them together in the Cleveland Web Walker meetup and Rise, and when he put them apart again, they weren't as bad. And then when they came in, so, well, the thing is, he found out that the interaction on the blogs has to be, if you're going to build a good community, has to be supplemented with face-to-face contact like we're having now. And socialization. The Blogapalooza, that was a community builder. That was a heck of a fan club. I mean, so there have been all kinds of things that we've all tried, and on the blogs too, that have worked. And I don't know of any other place in the country that has done this, and I think it's because of the fact that we're hungry or needy or have dire necessities.
Well, let's talk about, Peter talked about a purpose-driven online community versus a personal blog. And I think that there's a lot of us here that are purpose-driven for whatever reasons. They may be different reasons, but we are kind of purpose-driven. Does that make a difference?
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yes, you may.
Because I don't think you can have a personal blog and sustain it, okay? It has to sort of become something outside of yourself because you're going to lose interest in things.
Right.
You know, I was just talking with a guy who, a lot of people probably know Bill Barrow, who works at CSU. He's the like Cleveland History
Memory Project.
Memory Project, right? And he was saying he was really excited about blogging, and he hit it really hard, and he went really good for about a year. And then because he didn't have a community that was active around him, you know, that was kind of sending him emails like, hey, you know, you should blog about this, or, you know, I just came across this. He just kind of lost interest in it, and he wasn't able to sustain it. So I think it's really important to connect with other people. I always kind of look at it as like the sort of first order of becoming a blogger is just going out and reading blogs and reading the stuff that you're interested in. Then you kind of like, well, maybe I should comment on this, and you know, you'll think about commenting, but you won't actually comment, you know. And then you'll start leaving comments about stuff, and then eventually, you know, like Valdez, you'll start your own blog.
You know, George, one thing you find out too, once you start blogging, is if you're going to carry it on, you can't, like Bill, take the whole thing on your shoulders and the one thing you found out early on was it's not about George. It's not about Tim. It's not about Gloria. It's about everybody. And at that point, you cede control, and the more you cede control, the more powerful that blog becomes. And you were the ultimate in ceding control.
Can